There comes a moment in every life, a moment so profound, so sacred, that it defines everything that follows. You may not recognize it when it arrives. It doesn't always come with flashing signs or a blaring trumpet. Sometimes it enters in silence. It comes dressed in the ordinary, a conversation, a chance meeting, a decision that feels small. And yet, it is in that moment that heaven leans in, waiting to see what you'll do. Because in that moment, you are standing at the crossroads of choice. You've been there before. Maybe you're there now. It's that still place in the soul, where you sense that things cannot stay the same. Something has to change. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now, because deep inside, you know, if you don't act now, you might never act again. That's the truth most people don't want to face. We think there will always be another chance, another day, another opportunity. But life isn't always so generous. Every soul comes to the edge of a decision. One road leads to the discomfort of growth, pain, uncertainty, the unknown. It's the path where the muscles ache, the heart races, the fears rise up and scream, turn back. It's the path that demands everything from you, your pride, your excuses, your comfort. The other road, it's easier, smoother. It doesn't cost you anything right away. But in time, it will cost you everything. God gives us the power to choose, but not forever. That's the deception. The crossroads doesn't last. The moment will pass, and once it's gone, it doesn't always come again. You can't assume the door will always be open, that your strength will always be this strong, that your heart will always be this willing. You see, the tragedy isn't in choosing the wrong path. It's waiting so long that the path disappears altogether. Some people spend their entire lives at the edge of obedience. They feel the call. They sense the weight of destiny. They know they were made for more. But when the moment comes, they shrink back. Not because they are evil, not because they don't care, but because they're afraid. And so they delay. They overthink, they tell themselves. Not now. And that's the fatal wound. There is no neutral ground in this life. You are either moving forward or drifting backward. There's no such thing as standing still. The moment you refuse the call to rise is the moment you begin to fall. And if you don't decide with conviction, life will decide for you by default. You'll drift into a version of yourself that looks nothing like the one you were meant to become. The greatest enemy of your future isn't failure, it's hesitation. It's the moment you hear the whisper in your heart, you were made for this, and you pretend you didn't hear it. It's the stirring in your soul to break free, to rise up, to walk in purpose, and you silence it with distraction. You scroll, you procrastinate, you numb yourself, all to avoid the discomfort of change. But God didn't call you to comfort. He called you to courage. He didn't create you for safety. He created you for significance. And significance always demands sacrifice. That's why the crossroads moment feels like a tearing, because something has to be left behind. You can't move forward carrying everything. You can't step into destiny while dragging along the weight of fear, doubt, or the voices of the past. When Moses stood before the Red Sea, it wasn't just water in front of him, it was a decision. Behind him was Egypt, bondage, slavery, a known life, even if it was painful. Ahead of him was the impossible, an ocean with no bridge. And yet, in that moment, he chose to move. Not because he had all the answers, but because he trusted the one who called him. That is the essence of the now or never moment. You won't always have clarity. You won't always feel confident. But faith doesn't wait for certainty. Faith steps out, even when the ground isn't visible. Faith trusts that if God brought you to this moment, He's already gone ahead of you into your future. But make no mistake, the window won't stay open forever. The people who wait for the right time often find that time never arrives. Life gets louder. Responsibilities pile up. The fire that once burned in your chest slowly dims under the weight of routine. One day becomes 1 year, and before you know it, you're looking back at the moment that could have changed everything, if only you had said yes. Regret doesn't start loud. It starts as a quiet voice, a what if whispered late at night, a memory of the moment. You felt called to rise, but didn't, and over time it grows heavier, because deep down your soul remembers the path you were supposed to take. It remembers the courage you never used, and it never forgets. But there is still good news. You are still breathing, which means this moment, this very breath, could be your crossroads. Right now, you can choose to stop waiting and start walking. You can choose to silence the fear and step into the fire. You can choose the hard road, the narrow road, the one that requires everything, but gives you more than you ever imagined. It will hurt. That's not a secret. But the pain of pushing through the discomfort of now is a holy pain. It's the pain of becoming. It's the pain of shedding the old self so the new one can emerge. And that pain, though real, is temporary, but the reward, eternal. You must not let this moment pass. You must not let your life become a monument to hesitation, because right now you are standing at your crossroads. Right now, heaven is watching. Right now, the future is waiting to be written, and your choice will become the first word. So choose boldly, choose fully, choose now, because it truly is now, or never. Pain, that word alone makes most people flinch. It's the part of life we try to avoid, suppress, or outrun. We medicate it, we mask it, we distract ourselves from it. Yet pain is the great equalizer. It finds everyone, rich and poor, strong and weak, young and old. It visits without warning, without permission. It knocks the breath out of you, brings tears to your eyes, and puts questions in your heart. But what if I told you pain wasn't your enemy? What if I told you that pain, though brutal, is often the hand of God, not to destroy you, but to deliver you? What if the very thing you've been begging Him to take away is the very thing He's using to wake you up? You see, pain has a purpose. In this life, God never wastes pain. Not a single tear, not a single wound, not a single long night or aching loss. Every moment of pain, He gathers it like a gardener gathers seed. And though you may not see the harvest yet, though the soil of your soul may feel dry and broken, something is growing beneath the surface. We live in a world that worships comfort. Everything is about convenience, ease, avoiding difficulty. We're sold the lie that the good life means a painless life. But that's not the truth. The good life isn't found in the absence of pain. It's found in the presence of purpose. And purpose is often born through pain. Look at the lives of those who were used most powerfully, the ones who carried fire in their hearts and courage in their bones. None of them got there through ease. They got there through storms, through valleys, through moments that nearly crushed them. Joseph was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned before he ever saw a throne. David was hunted, broken, and humiliated before he ever wore a crown. Paul was beaten, imprisoned, shipwrecked, left for dead, and yet he wrote the words that still set hearts on fire today. Even Christ, he did not bypass pain. He walked straight into it. He bore the weight of it, and in doing so, he redeemed it. Pain, my friend, is not a sign that God is absent. Often, it's the evidence that he's closest. The pain you feel is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the refining fire that burns away what was never meant to stay. It's the chisel in the hand of the master, shaping you into something greater than you can see. When gold is refined, it's not done gently. It's heated, burned, purged, and only after it's endured the flames does it shine. You're not being abandoned, you're being refined. Your tears are watering a future you can't yet comprehend. Your struggles are stretching your soul, expanding your spirit, forging your strength. But hear me, it's a choice. Pain can either make you bitter or make you better. It can break you down or it can break you open. You can choose to curse the pain or you can choose to learn from it. You can shake your fist at heaven and ask, why me? Or you can bow your head and say, what now? Because if you surrender your pain to God, He'll turn it into power. If you bring Him your brokenness, He'll turn it into beauty. There are some lessons you'll never learn in comfort. Some growth only happens in darkness. The roots of the tallest trees grow not in the sunlight, but in the hidden depths of the soil, pushed down by the weight of wind and weather. And so it is with the soul. The pressure you feel, that's your roots going deeper. The weight on your chest, that's your spirit being grounded in truth. Don't despise the discomfort. Don't run from the refining. Sit with it, face it. Let it do its holy work. Because in that fire you are being forged, not destroyed, forged, shaped into someone who can carry more than you thought, love deeper than you dreamed, and stand stronger than you imagined. Sometimes God allows the storm, not to punish you, but to position you. He shakes everything that can be shaken, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. He removes the scaffolding, so you'll lean fully on the foundation. He strips away your false security, so you'll discover your true strength. That strength doesn't come from success. It comes from surrender. It comes when you've cried your last tear and still choose to believe. When you've hit rock bottom and find that God is the rock at the bottom. You may say, but I can't take this much longer. And I understand. Oh, how many have stood at that same edge. But let me tell you this. Pain is loudest before the breakthrough. The enemy always screams when he's losing ground. That pressure you feel, it's not the end, it's the beginning. Just as a woman groans in agony before new life comes forth, your pain is a sign that something new is about to be birthed in you. You are not buried, you are planted. And when the time is right, you will rise. Not in your strength, but in His. Not with your plan, but with His purpose. And what you thought was breaking you will be the very thing that makes you. But here's the warning. If you run from the pain, you'll run from the lesson. If you numb the discomfort, you'll miss the transformation. There are people who have spent years shackled to regret, all because they refuse to face the pain in front of them. They chose ease over growth. They chose denial over discipline. They chose to stay numb rather than get healed. And so, their pain didn't disappear. It multiplied. It hardened. It grew bitter. Because unhealed pain always becomes a prison. And that's not what you were made for. You were not made to be a prisoner to your past. You were not designed to live small, safe, or numb. You were created with fire, with calling, with greatness stitched into your very soul. And the pathway to that greatness is paved with pain, not as punishment, but as preparation. God is not trying to break you down. He's trying to build you up. He is pruning what no longer serves you, He is removing what you thought you needed so you can receive what you truly need. He is not delaying your blessing, He is protecting it. Because the blessing given too soon becomes a burden. The throne without the trial leads to pride. The power without the process leads to collapse. So let Him work, let Him mold you. Cry if you must, scream if you need to, but don't quit. Don't give in to the lie that this is how it ends. It's not the end, it's the middle. It's the fire in which faith is forged. And faith that has not been tested cannot be trusted. There is something sacred about pain surrendered to purpose. It becomes holy ground, the place where your tears water hope, the place where your scars tell stories, not of defeat, but of deliverance, the place where you meet God, not just in the comfort, but in the crushing, and oh, how He meets you there, in the silence, in the struggle, in the nights where you wonder if He hears you. He does. He is nearer than your breath, holding every tear, recording every cry, working behind the scenes in ways you can't yet see. One day you'll look back. You'll remember the pain, yes, but more than that, you'll remember who you became because of it. You'll see how it carved out depths of compassion you never had, how it taught you to pray like never before, how it awakened parts of you that had long been asleep. You'll realize that what the enemy meant for harm, God used for healing, that the crushing became the anointing, that the sorrow gave birth to strength, and when someone else walks through their fire, you'll be able to say, I know this pain. I've been there, but you're going to make it, and here's why. Because your pain, once redeemed, becomes someone else's survival guide. Your wound becomes a weapon. Your story becomes a lifeline. But it starts here, with this moment, with the decision to stop running from the pain and start learning from it, to stop asking why me, and start asking what now, to trust that the one who allows the fire also walks with you in it. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not finished. You are being refined. You are being shaped. You are being prepared. So let the pain do its work. Don't fight it. Face it. Let it stretch you. Let it humble you. Let it teach you. And then, when the time comes, let it lift you. Because the same fire that hurts you now will one day light the way for someone else. Pain has a purpose, and it's greater than you know. Later, it sounds harmless, doesn't it? Just a little delay, just a little more time, just not now. Later feels like a cushion, a buffer between us and the decision we're too afraid to make. It disguises itself as wisdom, patience, logic. But it's not wisdom, it's not peace, it's a lie, and it is one of the most dangerous lies ever whispered into the heart of a human being, because later is a thief. It doesn't steal your joy all at once. It doesn't rob your purpose overnight. It doesn't burn your dreams to the ground in a blaze of fire. No, it's more clever than that, more subtle, more devastating. Later lulls you to sleep. It says, you have time. You're not ready. Wait until things make more sense. Wait until you're stronger. Wait until the fear is gone. Wait until it feels right. And so you wait. Days pass, then weeks, then years. And all the while, the call on your life, the one that was meant to be answered now, is fading, not because it stopped calling, but because you stopped listening. We don't often recognize it, but the voice of later is often the voice of fear in disguise. It's the voice of hesitation dressed in the clothes of caution. And the longer you listen to it, the more powerless you become, because every time you choose delay over action, your courage dies a little. your conviction weakens, and your sense of purpose starts to dim. You start telling yourself things like, I'll chase my calling after I finish school. I'll get serious when I find the right opportunity. I'll fix my marriage when things calm down. I'll take my faith seriously when I'm older. I'll change ... later. But later is never guaranteed. That's the cruel twist. We make promises to a future we haven't been promised. We plan for a tomorrow that may never come. And in doing so, we risk missing the only thing that's ever been real. Right now is all you have. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment, that's the gift, that's the opportunity. And every time you choose later over now, you gamble that gift. You assume that life will wait for you to get ready. But life does not wait. The train does not stop at the same station twice. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you with one great failure. He just needs to convince you to wait. He just needs to wrap your purpose in procrastination. Because delay is often more deadly than denial. A soul that denies truth can one day receive it. But a soul that delays obedience dies slowly. There's a reason urgency is holy. There's a reason the voice of purpose always feels like fire in the bones. It's because now matters. When the spirit whispers, when conviction rises, when you feel that nudge in your gut telling you to move, that is the moment. That's the doorway to destiny. And it doesn't stay open forever. Think of all the moments in history where greatness was born. They were not comfortable moments. They were not delayed responses. They were people who said, I can't wait. People who saw the fire, who felt the urgency, and who acted in spite of their fear. They didn't wait for perfect conditions, because perfect conditions don't exist. You're never going to feel ready. The stars will not align. Your fear will not vanish. But if you wait for everything to feel easy, you'll never start. And if you never start, you'll never see what could have been. You'll die with the question still in your chest. What if I had said yes when I had the chance? What if Noah had waited until the skies were cloudy before he started building the ark? What if Esther had waited until someone else stepped forward to defend her people? What if the boy with the loaves and fishes said, let me wait until I have enough? What if Jesus waited until the crowd approved of him to carry the cross? The truth is, later is not just a delay of action, it's a denial of calling. Every time you say later to what you were meant to do now, you're telling God your timing isn't good enough for me. You're saying, I trust my fear more than I trust your voice. You might not say it out loud, but your hesitation speaks loudly. Look around. How many people do you know who are haunted by the word later? How many souls are shackled to regret because they almost did what they were called to do? They almost loved deeply. They almost forgave. They almost tried. They almost rose up. But they didn't, and now they live with the echo of almost a word that has no comfort, only sorrow. Later is the birthplace of regret. And regret is the most painful prison because it doesn't wound the body, it wounds the soul. Regret whispers reminders when you're trying to move forward. It pulls at your spirit when you're trying to heal. It's the weight you carry when the moment has passed and you realize you missed it, not because you weren't capable, but because you waited. But here's the grace. If you're still breathing, there's still a chance. The clock may be ticking, but it hasn't struck midnight yet. The door may be closing, but it hasn't shut. You can still choose now. You can still silence the voice of later and act on the voice of truth. The window may be narrow, but narrow is enough. You don't need everything figured out. You don't need the whole staircase. You just need the first step, and that step is always a choice, not a feeling, not a sign, not a guarantee. A choice. Every time you choose to act when you feel fear, you weaken fear's grip. Every time. You move forward in faith instead of retreating in comfort. You build spiritual momentum. And momentum is a holy thing. It doesn't come from perfection. It comes from obedience. That's why Scripture says, "Today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts." Not tomorrow, not later, today. Because when the Spirit calls, He means now, and the longer you wait, the harder your heart becomes. Not because you want it to, but because delayed obedience always turns into disobedience. You can't outsmart the Spirit. You can't bypass the call. You can't outrun your own destiny without cost. Because God didn't create you to exist in hesitation. He created you to move, to rise, to build, to speak, to give, to act. Don't believe the lie that you'll have more time later. The longer you wait, the louder the doubts get. The longer you delay, the dimmer the light becomes. The enemy knows he doesn't need to tempt you into rebellion. He just needs to trap you in reluctance. And so many of us are trapped there. Not because we're wicked, not because we don't care, but because we've been lulled to sleep by one more day. By the comfort of postponement, we've believed the whisper that there will be a better time, a more ideal season, a safer space to act. But destiny is never safe. Calling is never convenient. If it were, everyone would walk in it, but few do. Not because they weren't chosen, but because they never chose to respond. Right now, you're standing at your crossroads. You hear the whisper. You feel the stirring. You know what you're being asked to do. It's not unclear. It's just uncomfortable. And so the enemy steps in, not with fire and fury, but with the softest whisper. Just wait. Do it later. That voice wants your destiny to die in delay. It wants your fire to go cold in a waiting room that was never meant to be your home. But now is the moment to stand up, to break the chains of someday, to silence the excuses, to stop looking for the right feeling and start walking by faith. Yes, you will be afraid. Yes, the risk is real, but so is the cost of staying stuck. You were not made for hesitation. You were made for holy movement. You were not born to delay your greatness. You were born to rise into it. This is your wake-up call. This is your fire. Not tomorrow, not eventually, now, because later is a lie. Regret does not shout. It does not knock down your door or strike with a sudden blow. It waits, quietly, patiently. It speaks in whispers, and those whispers, they never stop. Regret doesn't come like a thief in the night. No, it enters like a shadow at dusk, so slowly you hardly notice. At first, it may sound like reflection. It may disguise itself as wisdom, but in time it turns bitter, heavy, permanent. Regret begins as a murmur, I should have, ... and ends as a chain that binds the soul to a past that can't be rewritten. It is the silent prison that no one talks about, a prison without walls, without guards, without locks, and yet one of the most confining places a person can live in, and millions live there. Right now, you see them every day, people smiling on the outside, successful in appearance, surrounded by the noise of life. But behind their eyes, deep in the corners of their mind, regret sits, whispering, waiting, reminding. Why didn't you say yes? Why did you stay silent? Why didn't you go after it? Why did you waste the moment? And the worst part, you can't go back. That's what makes regret different from pain. Pain may pass, pain can heal, but regret loops, it circles. It replays the moment you didn't act over and over and over again. It becomes a film strip burned into your memory, haunting your quiet hours and darkening your brightest days. Most people don't fall into regret suddenly. It happens in small decisions, in quiet hesitations, in harmless delays. It begins the moment you ignore a whisper, the moment you bury your intuition, the moment you trade what's right for what's comfortable. You don't realize what you're doing in the moment. It doesn't seem that important. You think you have time. You tell yourself, later, I'll fix it. Later, I'll say what I need to say later. I'll choose courage. But then one day, there is no later. The window closes. The moment passes. The opportunity expires. The person is gone. The door is shut. And in its place, not sorrow, not failure, but regret. The problem with regret is that it lingers. It's not a momentary emotion. It's a life companion when left unresolved. It shows up in your thoughts, in your relationships, in your prayers, in your silence. It can make a room full of laughter feel hollow. It can turn success into ashes. It can follow you even into sleep, shaping your dreams with memories of the road not taken. But it doesn't start with catastrophe. It starts with one decision: to avoid the pain of now, to choose comfort instead of confrontation, to stay safe instead of stepping out, to keep quiet when your heart is screaming to speak, to stay when your soul is pleading to go. That one moment may seem small, but it's never small. Every moment matters, especially the ones we walk away from. There are people who live their entire lives chasing distractions because they cannot face the weight of what they lost. They keep moving, keep working, keep talking, not because they're fulfilled, but because they're afraid of stillness. Because in the stillness, the regret speaks louder. You may be one of them. You may be carrying something right now, something that happened years ago, something you did or didn't do, something you should have changed, something you should have started or stopped. And the weight of that choice presses on you like an anchor. No one sees it, no one knows, but you carry it everywhere. You smile through it, you laugh over it, but it never really leaves. Because you know there was a moment when things could have gone differently. Maybe you had a chance to love, but fear made you walk away. Maybe you had a calling, but insecurity made you ignore it. Maybe you hurt someone and pride kept you from making it right. Maybe your soul whispered run, but you stayed seated in silence. And now, the memory won't let you go. This is the silent prison of regret. It doesn't lock you in all at once. It just makes the light a little dimmer, the joy a little duller, the voice inside you a little quieter, until one day, you're not even sure if you're really alive, just existing. But here is the painful truth you must face. You cannot go back. You cannot undo the past. You cannot rewrite the chapters already written. What's done is done. The silence happened. The inaction occurred. The moment passed, and that truth, if you're not careful, can break you. But it doesn't have to, because there's another truth, a greater one, and it is this: regret does not have to be your final chapter. You see, regret is only a prison if you let it be. Regret can also be a teacher, a mirror, a fire, a turning point. It can be the pain that finally pushes you toward purpose. It can be the voice that says, never again. It can be the reminder that tomorrow isn't promised, that moments matter, and that the next decision you make can still change everything. You may not get that old moment back, but you do have this one right now. This breath, this beating heart, this holy chance to rise up and say, I won't let regret win. Not again. You may have missed a door, but you're still standing in a hallway filled with others. You may have lost time, but God can redeem time. He doesn't need your perfection. He just needs your surrender. He doesn't ask for your guilt. He asks for your obedience. What you do next matters more than what you did last. Don't let regret grow into resignation. Don't let yesterday's mistakes become today's identity. You may have failed, but you are not a failure. You may have missed it once, but you haven't missed everything. As long as you are still breathing, there is still a reason. There is still purpose. There is still hope. Let your regret make you more aware, not more ashamed. Let it humble you, not haunt you. Let it become the testimony of what you learned, not the definition of who you are. Because here's the truth. Some of the most powerful lives are built on the ashes of regret. Some of the greatest voices are born from silence. Once held, some of the most compassionate hearts come from souls who once caused pain. Redemption isn't reserved for the perfect. It is promised to the willing. You don't have to live inside that prison. You don't have to be haunted by what if. You don't have to stay chained to a version of yourself that no longer exists. You can forgive. You can repent. You can release. And you can rise. But only if you choose it. Only if you stop feeding the memory more than you feed your mission. Only if you stop letting the enemy turn your reflection into a weapon. Because here's the secret. The enemy loves regret. He uses it to paralyze saints. He doesn't need you to commit great evil. He just needs you to stop believing that your life still matters. He will whisper, it's too late. He will remind you of every failure, every flaw, every missed chance. He'll tell you that you've disqualified yourself, that your voice is too weak, that your fire is too cold, that your story is over. But he's wrong, and he knows it, because he knows that one surrendered heart can still change everything. One bold choice, one act of courage, one whispered prayer, one step out of that prison. That's all it takes. God is not done with you, and regret is not your home. So rise up, speak the words you should have spoken. Forgive the one you need to forgive, even if it's yourself. Pick up the dream you dropped. Start the thing you said you were too old to start. Write the letter, make the call, walk toward the thing that terrifies you. Live the life you were too scared to claim the first time, because you may have wasted a moment, but you don't have to waste this one. And the key to that prison, it's been in your hand the whole time. Faith does not live in the future. Faith does not wait for all the answers. Faith is not a feeling you stumble into after everything starts to make sense. Real faith, the kind that moves mountains, the kind that shakes hell, the kind that changes lives, moves in the present tense. It lives in the now. It breathes in the moment. It acts before the understanding arrives. It obeys when the outcome is uncertain. It speaks when silence is safer. It steps forward when everything in you is screaming to stay still. Too many people are waiting for faith to feel safe. But faith is not safe. It is sacred. It was never designed to follow the rules of reason or logic or comfort. Faith doesn't ask for a map. It simply asks for movement. And when God speaks, when your soul hears that unmistakable voice calling you, You don't get the luxury of waiting for guarantees. He never promised you clarity. He promised you presence. He never said you'd see the full path. He said, "Follow me." You see, there are two kinds of believers: those who are waiting and those who are moving. And the tragedy is that most people, yes, most, die waiting. They wait for the fear to fade. They wait for the conditions to be right. They wait for the voice to repeat itself. They wait for someone to validate what they already know in their spirit. And in doing so, they miss what could have been. Because God blesses the step, not the hesitation. Look through every story in the scriptures, and you'll see the pattern. Movement precedes the miracle. Obedience comes before the outcome. The waters didn't part for Moses until he lifted his staff. The walls didn't fall at Jericho until the people walked in circles and shouted into the silence. The blind didn't see until they cried out. The lame didn't walk until they tried to stand. The loaves didn't multiply until someone handed over what little they had. Why? Because faith is not proved in what you believe in your mind. Faith is proved in what you do with your life. It is a verb, not a noun, a muscle, not a mood, and it only grows when you use it. We talk a lot about trusting God's plan, His timing, His will. But trust is not passive. Trust is not standing still with your arms folded, saying, "God, when you move, I'll move." That's not trust, that's delay. Trust says, "God, I don't see the way, but I believe you are the way." Trust says, "God, I feel fear, but I'll obey anyway." Trust says, "This might fail, but you've never failed me, so I'll take the step." Because the truth is, if you're waiting for fear to leave before you move, you'll be waiting forever. Faith isn't the absence of fear. It's the courage to act in spite of it. If the enemy can't destroy your calling, he'll delay it. And the easiest way to delay your destiny is to convince you that faith is something you feel. That's the trap. You keep waiting to feel bold enough, to feel ready, to feel led. But faith doesn't wait for emotion. It moves through conviction. There will be days when your knees shake, when your voice cracks, when your mind spins with questions and your chest tightens with doubt. That's okay. That doesn't disqualify you. It confirms you. Because faith that costs you nothing produces nothing. And faith that is never tested is faith that is never trusted. The greatest things God will do through you will not begin with peace. They'll begin with pressure. Pressure to trust. Pressure to move. Pressure to believe when belief feels insane. That's when faith is formed. Not when the sun is shining, but when the clouds are thick and the path is dark. Maybe you're in that place now. Maybe you're staring at a decision, a calling, a moment, and something inside you knows. This is the step, but the fear is loud. The risk feels big. You want to obey, but you're waiting for the perfect signal, the perfect moment, the perfect peace. Can I tell you something? The peace often comes after the step, not before, because it's in the stepping that you find Him, not in the certainty, but in the surrender. That's why Scripture says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." Not a spotlight, not a floodlight, a lamp, just enough light for one step. Not the whole road, not the whole plan, just one illuminated piece of obedience. Why? Because if you saw the whole plan, you'd never learn to trust the person. You'd rely on strategy instead of surrender. But God wants your heart more than your performance. He wants your obedience more than your understanding. So He speaks and He waits. Not for your perfection, but for your movement. And every time you move, even if it's shaky, even if it's small, you are declaring, I trust you more than I trust myself. You are saying, I don't need to know the outcome to obey the voice. You are reminding your own soul that you serve a God who is always faithful, even when the path is not visible. That's the kind of faith that pleases God. Not loud faith, not polished faith, not social media faith, obedient faith. Faith that says yes before the details are clear. Faith that walks when the wind is strong. Faith that keeps showing up when the doors stay shut. You don't need all the answers. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need certainty. You need obedience. You need movement, because faith without works is dead, not wounded, not tired, dead. And too many people carry dead faith inside them. Faith that's been paralyzed by fear and drowned by delay. But it doesn't have to stay that way. You can move again. You can trust again. You can step out today, even if your knees tremble, because God meets you in motion. He didn't call Abraham and then give him the full route. He said, go to the land I will show you. He didn't tell Peter how the water would hold him. He just said, come. He didn't wait for Gideon to become fearless. He called him while he was hiding. He didn't require strength from Moses. He simply asked him to stand. And so he asks the same of you. Will you take the step? Will you obey without knowing the end? Will you trust him enough to move now? Because now is all you've got. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Later isn't promised. Someday isn't safe. But now is sacred. Now is where faith lives. Now is the altar where courage is born. Faith doesn't wait for doors to open. Faith walks up and knocks. Faith doesn't wait for fear to leave. Faith moves with fear trailing behind. Faith doesn't wait for signs in the sky. Faith trusts the still, small voice. You've waited long enough. You've analyzed long enough. You've prayed circles long enough. You've let fear take the front seat long enough now. It's time to move, even if it's just one step. Even if it doesn't feel like much. Even if the world doesn't see it, heaven sees it, and heaven honors it. Because when you move in faith, real faith, present faith, you are partnering with the living God, and He never lets obedience go unrewarded. He never lets movement go unnoticed. He never lets trust fall to the ground. The greatest doors in your life will swing open, not when you wait, but when you walk. And what's on the other side of your obedience may be bigger than you ever imagined. So, don't delay, don't debate, don't wait for better conditions. Just move, because faith, real, mountain-moving, destiny-changing faith, only ever moves in the present tense. Regret is the quiet thief of peace, the haunting whisper in the night, the shadow that follows you even when the sun is shining, the chain that rattles softly every time you almost forget, the weight that rests on your chest in those still moments when no one else is around. It doesn't scream, it doesn't shout, it just lingers, watching, waiting, whispering, you could have. You should have. Regret is the cost of inaction. It is the interest you pay on the things you refuse to face. It grows with time. It feeds on delay. And it buries men and women with voices still locked inside their throats, dreams still trapped in the basement of their hearts, love never spoken, risks never taken, forgiveness never offered, lives unlived. You think pain comes from trying and failing. But let me tell you the truth. The deepest pain in this life comes from not trying at all. Trying and failing. That brings lessons, growth, resilience. But not trying, that brings silence. And silence brings regret. And regret brings torment. Because you can explain failure. But you can't explain never showing up. What haunts people most in their old age isn't what they did, it's what they didn't do. The opportunities they passed by, the chances they let someone else take, the dreams they buried because it wasn't the right time, the conversations they never had because pride got in the way, the lives they could have touched if they hadn't waited for the perfect moment. We are not tormented by the battles we fought. We are tormented by the battles we never entered, by the people we never forgave, by the forgiveness we never asked for, by the love we never expressed, by the stories we never wrote, the music we never composed, the truth we never spoke, and regret, oh regret, doesn't sleep. It doesn't age. It doesn't fade. It clings. You can try to drown it with distractions, bury it under achievement, silence it with busyness. But in the quiet, in the deep aching quiet, it comes back, and it asks the same question. Why didn't you? Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you take the step? Why didn't you try when your heart was burning? That's why this moment matters, because you are standing in the only place where regret can still be avoided, the present. Once this moment passes, you can never get it back. It will either become part of your courage or part of your regret, and you don't get to decide later. You decide now, because once it becomes the past, you are powerless to change it. You don't know how long you have. You assume you'll get another chance. But time is not your servant. It doesn't wait for your convenience. It doesn't adjust for your comfort. Every breath is a borrowed gift. Every moment is a sacred offering. And the tragedy is that we waste what we can never retrieve. How many days have slipped through your fingers? How many times have you said, "I'll start tomorrow," only to find that tomorrow came and left, and still nothing changed? Let me ask you something, not to condemn, but to confront. What is it you're running from? What is it that you know deep down you're called to do, but you keep pushing off? Is it the business idea that you've been sketching out in secret, but never launching because you're afraid you'll fail? Is it the relationship you should have walked away from months ago, but you stayed because comfort was louder than conviction? Is it the book, the song, the mission, the ministry, the message, the risk, that idea you felt once like a fire in your chest, but let it die because the world didn't applaud fast enough? If you do not decide to act now, today, then understand this. You are not choosing safety. You are choosing regret. It may not feel like regret today. Today, it will feel like relief. The relief of avoiding discomfort. But that relief is short-lived. It will soon give way to a shadow, the shadow of what could have been, and that shadow doesn't forget you. It follows you. It sits in the back of your mind while you smile at dinners. It creeps into your heart when you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling. It tightens your chest when you watch someone else do what you were called to do. And it asks again, why not you? Regret is the memory of disobedience. It is the echo of a life unlit, and it multiplies with every decision made out of fear. If you think this is dramatic, ask the elderly, not the ones who are wealthy, but the ones who are wise. Ask them what they wish they had done differently. They will almost never say, "I wish I had played it safer." No, they'll say, "I wish I had taken more risks. I wish I had said I love you more often. I wish I had started sooner. I wish I had spoken up when it mattered. I wish I hadn't been so afraid of failing. Regret is not poetic, it is brutal. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It arrives. When you're weakest, when it's too late to do anything about it. But here's the beautiful truth. You are not too late yet. You are not beyond redemption. The story isn't over. You are still breathing. And as long as you are still breathing, you can still choose courage over comfort. You can still rewrite the future, but it starts with a choice now. You don't get to drift into destiny. You don't stumble into greatness. You don't wake up one day and find you've accidentally lived your purpose. No, you fight for it. You press into it. You decide in this moment that the pain of discipline is better than the weight of regret. Discipline lasts for a season. Regret lasts forever. If you don't believe me, visit a graveyard. It's the richest place on earth because it's full of buried potential. Songs never sung, books never written, sermons never preached, ideas never built, love never expressed, forgiveness never released. And why? Because people waited. They waited for the perfect moment. They waited for the right feeling. They waited until they felt ready, and they ran out of time. Please, hear. This time is not waiting on you. It is moving second by second, minute by minute, and every moment you hesitate is a moment you cannot get back. Regret doesn't look like failure. It looks like hesitation. It looks like caution dressed up as wisdom. It looks like busyness without purpose. It looks like scrolling past your calling because you're too distracted to hear it. It doesn't come crashing in like a tidal wave. It seeps in like a slow leak until one day you wake up in a life you don't recognize, built on decisions you didn't mean to make, surrounded by the echo of what could have been. But there is a way out. It's not easy. It's not convenient. But it is simple. Act now, speak now, love now, forgive now, build now, move now, write now, start now, because if you don't, regret will come. And when it does, it won't leave. You may smile in public, but you'll ache in private. You may look successful, but you'll feel hollow. You may be praised by men, but haunted by memory. And no amount of applause can drown out the sound of your own soul crying, I was meant for more. But the good news is that regret is a choice, and so is courage. You get to choose, right now, which voice you obey. The voice of fear that says, stay still. Be safe, what if you fail? Or the voice of faith that says, rise up. Be bold, what if you succeed? You are standing in the doorway of your destiny. You can close the door and walk away. Back into comfort, back into silence, back into smallness, and live with the regret of never knowing who you might have become. Or you can step through right now. Not when it's easier, not when it's safer, not when you feel like it. Now, because the only way to outrun the shadow of regret is to move faster than it, and the only way to silence its voice is to raise your own. Don't let your life become a cautionary tale. Let it be a living testimony, a story of what happens when someone refuses to let fear write the final chapter. You don't need 1,000 steps, just one. One step of obedience, one step of courage, one step toward the thing you were born to do. That's all it takes to escape the grip of regret. Because regret never sleeps, but neither does grace. And grace is standing at your door, right now, whispering, you don't have to live this way. You still have time, but you must choose. So choose, before the shadow swallows another day, before the clock ticks louder, before the silence grows deeper. Choose to live. Choose to act. Choose now. Because this moment is the only one you're guaranteed.